interesting one. Trump tariffs.
Yeah.
Brr,
Exciting
brr,
session.
brr. The
Trump's,
world is the world is coming to an end.
yes, the fear. We're gonna like look at something else and start doing everything differently with Trump.
Yeah, so I think with what's happening, especially in the US market at the moment, I know that a lot of our clients they want to scale their businesses into the US, and we have helped a number of clients that scale their businesses into the US, and it's a big question at the moment in terms of these tariffs that Trump has kind of like rolled out. What's going to happen? Is it going to change the economics of my business completely? Can I even sell into the US market entirely? Do I need to change my whole structure of business? And I think this is going to be quite interesting because it's very relevant and very timely in terms of what's actually happening in the market right now. So, what have you seen so far in terms of like what's happening with all of these tariffs that are being imposed? I know the stock markets. I think it's wiped out something like $5 trillion in the last
Yes.
1 or 2 weeks. So, what are you seeing in terms of like just this pattern at the moment?
Yes. So actually, this is not the first time that Trump would actually do this. Just like kind of come back to a little bit like history because he did this in 2018. He did kind of similar strategy, but this time it's more aggressive because he went and just did a change that a lot of, I would say, people in the market didn't expect him to actually execute. That's actually why the market was kind of, surprised is because Trump did say a lot of things in the past and he didn't necessarily act on them. And this is the first time that he does like act. Not only the first time, but this is the first time where, he does like do something that's more aggressive in terms of the market overall. And he did
Mm.
like impose 25% increase like in terms of tax on some goods. And this is the surprising element for, let's say, the China side, the Canada, I would say even Australia, in terms of the market overall, because they were not expecting him to execute on a promise that he did. So he's actually saying this like for months, but he just
Right.
imposed it and he started the process. So I think the
Mm.
market is pretty much surprised by the execution of something he promised, rather
Mm.
than, the element itself. So it's more of surprise, but it's not necessarily something that is like causing like I would say harm in general, because this is a
Right.
strategy that he used in the past.
Yeah, right. Because I know that even like through the whole process of him leading up to it's like it's on. Is it on? It's off. I don't think we're going to do it. You know what I mean? Like it was like back and forth and back, and it's like week on week. I think he was like changing his mind, and
Yes,
it was
tweets
kind of
like
like,
put in a message in the truth. Actually, it's not Twitter; it's the truth that he's using. And X also is not using it much, so he's more using the truth to position his own, I would say, views on things. And
yes,
yes, he's really, I think, positioning some things that are new for the market in general. Pretty much a president that would execute fast. This
yeah,
might be
correct.
seen as positive or negative depending on how you see it, because he is looking to build businesses in the US. That's actually his goal. And he's looking to push them forward. And
Mm,
some things that he's doing, in my opinion, and I want to be a little bit like kind of analyzing the US side, but he's really positioning that as a big business. Like the US right
yeah,
now is kind of a big business and he's doing deals. So it's not
yeah,
politics for him. It's almost like I'm doing a deal with Canada, I'm doing a deal with China. It should be fair. And if it's not fair, I'm
mm,
going to react. And I'm going to threaten.
mm,
I'm going to use leverage. If you think about it in ecom, we do the same thing when we're talking to suppliers. Like, hey,
mm.
I have this, price that I want to have. I want to have this MOQ. And if you can, then I'm going to look at another one. So technically, you're, moving away from them, and they need to adjust their pricing, and technically they're impacted as well. So tariffs is
Mm.
just a negotiation tool, in my opinion, she's using. And I think Trump is a businessman, so he's coming in looking at,
Yeah.
let's say, this as a business, not necessarily politics.
Yeah, and I think it's like I mean, I guess it's challenging, and like you mentioned as well in terms of like him, operating and doing some of these things in the past. I feel like there's so many of these types of like fluctuations that have happened, not just
Mm.
in relation to like tariffs, but also like just like obviously through COVID, the cost of like supply chain and how much like I
Yes.
think containers went from like $3,000 to like $30,000, and everyone was like, "This is going to
It's done.
destroy." This is going to
Yes.
destroy
We should do
commerce.
something else.
Supply chain is going to shut down.
Yes.
The world is going to come to an end. So I think it's a very interesting kind of time at the moment. But I think overall, like the fundamental like belief that always have with like situations like this is that like it's going to pass and it's going to improve, and we will adjust to these new circumstances and these new situations. What do you think some of the main potential impacts are for people in terms of like e-commerce sellers at the moment?
I'm actually surprised that there is a lot of fear in terms of e-commerce, but there should not be. If you
Mm,
think about it, like you have a control first on your pricing, so you can technically charge more, and there are no
mm,
regulation that would hold you from pushing more your prices. So for me, it's like, you can still control things. You should be really looking at how can I position something of value so that I
mm,
can position my pricing regardless of the policies. So I don't
yeah,
think it's if you think about it really in terms of fundamentals, like there's no impact on e-commerce. It just impact probably on pricing and customers paying that and say inflation. Because for me, it's like almost like an inflation that's happening.
correct.
You need to kind of offset that with your pricing. So it's not necessarily something that you should fear, like, hey, it's like e-commerce is dead, which is what I hear sometimes, like, hey, e-commerce is dead. Like we can't do business anymore. And this happened
Mm,
back in 2018, 2020,
mm,
2021, 2022. And 2023. So we saw it like actually multiple times e-commerce is dead and we should really do something else. But in my opinion, distraction, content, and it's not necessarily where you should put in your focus. You should really think about how can I work on my business to position something where it doesn't really matter who's the president. I'm selling something
yeah,
that's of value. So I don't think there's a
correct.
strong impact for e-commerce sales in general.
And I think it's also like because you can get so swept up in this as well. Like I had this experience recently with the AI kind of like sphere, and I was like, oh my god, this AI thing is going mental, which it
They're gonna
is.
take all the
Like
jobs.
it actually is like blowing up and it's going crazy. And there's so many things, and we'll do another podcast talking about e-commerce and AI because there's some amazing things that you can do. But like it was so interesting because what I observed was like as I was kind of going through this like rabbit hole of AI, like I spent like it must have been about 3 months, like absolutely at
Yeah,
the
all
top
the
of my
tools.
prior. And it was just like YouTube videos and it was like research and it was like, deep wet and it was like late nights and early mornings. I was not sleeping. I was talking to my wife and I was like, this is the most exciting thing. I think maybe I need to rethink the whole company. And I went into
Everything.
this I went into this whole meltdown thinking like this is going to take over which again like arguably it is, but it's also like at what cost? You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
you're in a current opportunity, and the opportunity that you have right now, which is a sure thing that is working and producing you income, is a much better opportunity than some potential random gimmick that you're chasing. And I think the tariffs and the fear-based kind of like mongering that people can have around this is a little bit similar, where they just get so swept up into I'm terrified, I'm afraid, I'm really, really concerned about what's going to happen, researching. Like you take your attention off your business. Like
Yes.
we have clients that are operating in the US right now and crushing it, and it's like
Yes.
they have not realized any impact,
Yes.
right?
And also I think about it like I would fear something that would impact just my business and not other
Correct,
businesses. But if it's
correct.
everyone is in the same court, we're kind of playing the same game. So why are you afraid? It's like you're impacted, I'm impacted. So it's a fair game in my opinion,
Correct.
as long as it's not just me and my business, or it's like something that's just targeting me for, let's say, whatever reason.
Mm,
I'm more than happy to compete in a different environment, as long as it's not something particular like to my situation where I can't push my business because it's the product I made, there's some problem in it or regulation regarding that product. Unless it's a
mm,
case, like I don't have any problem. Like everyone is competing, we have a higher price, we should adjust to it. The market is expecting it. So for me, it's like a fair game as long as
mm.
it's not just targeted. And I think that someone launching right now that like, hey, I don't know what to do. I should not do e-commerce. This is the same thing that in 2018 we heard, 2020, 2021, 2022. So if I was to come back, tariffs in 2018, AliExpress, there was like an e-packet shipping that was their main kind of supply chain. And think about this,
Mm.
billions of dollars. And then Trump kind of started negotiating if this is making sense for China to have the same price as the US, just to kind of, be like fair. And
Yep.
that impacted, AliExpress, the whole business. And then they're
Mm,
like, this is kind of I would say, not only AliExpress, you have all the drop shipping backend on all the suppliers that are affected by this particular change. And they
mm.
survived. And they run the business, and right now they're still operating. So why would you stress about something that you can't control? That's something I'm always thinking
Yeah.
about. If you can't control it, you should just focus on your actions and work on your business, because the rest is going to just come naturally as you progress.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, it's so true. Like I think preparing or I guess there's like if you're preparing for something and thinking about it so far into the future that you're getting kind of like you're changing the behavior, and as an extension your business is kind of like suffering right now. It's like you're kind of like reacting to something in the market that hasn't even actually taken effect yet, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's a little bit of what's happening at the moment. If we look at even like what's happening with the stock market right now, I think that's literally like directly proportionate to Trump even talking about these. Like there
Yes.
hasn't really been too many impact. It's just a little bit of uncertainty, and all of a
Yes.
sudden people are selling
Massively.
out, and they go on this massive kind of like sell off, and the market gets liquidated, $5 trillion, whatever it is. And it's like how that impacts the small businesses is exactly the same. Like they're sitting there freaking out about something that might not impact them at all.
Yes.
um
And
yeah, you're right, go.
I've seen actually businesses like business owners like this is in the past where they talk too much about politics, and I'm like, what's your conversion rate? I'm like, I want them to come back to reality. Your conversion rate, please, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're not focusing on the right things. And I also saw others that are interested in the topics. They say they're interested in e-com. They want to launch their business. In 2020, they didn't launch their business. And I talk to them right now, like, hey, where are you? Like, what's happening? It's like, no, I didn't launch it because remember like 2020? Like, yeah, since then I was like just afraid. And I'm thinking 2020 was the
Mm,
best year for e-com. It was the best year
yeah,
ever. If you ask
yeah,
about like what's the best year that we saw a surge in e-commerce and everyone making money was 2020. I was literally
so
thinking
true.
when I was running ads, like we're kind of making money is at the end of the world because it just like it's insane. It's like and every
Right.
person was afraid, and I was like, hey, this is the best time. So I think you need to always think about this. There are people out there that didn't do their business, they didn't launch anything, they paused on their dreams just because of the news, which doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
It's so interesting because you hear that still, and I don't know if you experience this as well with some of clients or business owners, but it's like um the COVID story, and it's like now we're in 2025, and it's like, oh yeah, like back in COVID that really messed me around, and I'm like,
Yes,
mate, it's
5 years
been
ago.
5 years now. Like, are you still like carrying on about that same story? So I think it's the same thing. I think in like, 6 months, maybe 12 months, no one will even remember this whole thing in
Yes.
terms of like the whole tariffs. I do think that there's like a little bit to kind of be aware of in terms of how politics in general like impacts your business. Like if there's going to be like increases in like maybe like capital gains tax or some form of like tax legislation, they're doing something in Australia or they're trying to do something like that, which can impact the way that you actually pay tax on gains on assets and things like that. I think if you have properties or you have business assets or you have assets that you hold and then you're not aware of these kind of like changes, and then all of a sudden you're getting taxed a lot more on an asset that you hold because you didn't really know about it. Like those types of things I think are important. But in relation to this, I think for the most part of our audience, in terms of the people that listen to this, especially in the Australian market, look, what's your position on an Australian company shipping into the US? Like, there's not really any tariffs or any forms of imports, is there?
So far, right now, if you're shipping, let's say to Australia, sorry, to the US and you're in Australia, you should not be impacted much because you're just shipping to a customer. If you're doing it manually, if you're working with 3PL, they're going to take care of all the back end. But in reality,
Mm,
it's not like you're not impacted because all these tariffs are still limited and they're not necessarily implemented like I would say across all the categories. So you should not
yeah.
be impacted right now. That's the first
Mm,
thing. And even if you look at the impact overall, it's still like it can change anytime. So there's a lot of I would say back and forth, and I don't think it's going to be pushed for the next 2 years or 3 years. It's still going to be, I think, a negotiation tactic, and it's just around that. So it's just a leverage that Trump is using. He's not going to be like making the global market affected just because of the tariffs. I don't think he's going to be pushing that, but right now you're
yeah.
not impacted. So I would say your focus should be looking at working with so let's say if you're using a 3PL, working with them in terms of logistics, any kind of fees that are potentially
Mm,
that could be there. I'm just noticing that some suppliers and some, let's say, logistic companies, they're actually trying to kind of increase their prices just to follow the trends, which is something that might happen just, so
yes.
that you're aware of, because they
Mm,
hear about this. I'm like, hey, we're not impacted, but how about we increase a little bit our pricing? Right? It just makes sense. If
mm,
we tell let's say, customer that because of the tariffs, we need to increase, and
yes.
that's a reason.
Yeah.
So they have arguments, like they have like kind of a reasoning right now to increase, and that's something that you might be, affected by. So I would really ask
Mm,
about, the cost, why we're having this, like, let's say,
mm.
surge in pricing, and you can look at even the details. If you're shipping in the US, look at shipping, let's say, an order yourself and see the fees, and then you can kind of analyze that. So I think that's another
Mm.
element to consider.
Yeah, and I think like if you look at it from similar to what you mentioned at the start there, as far as like from a first principles perspective, it's like what's Trump trying to do? Is he trying to cripple businesses and make the company weak, or is he trying to like make the company strong and give
Yes.
businesses a platform to grow and prosper? And it's like like we discussed, like he's a super successful like billionaire, so it's kind of like he wants to support companies to grow because he knows that that's where where the actually country grows from as well. So I think this little
But
patch like
yes,
his
it's
intention
fear
behind
on
this.
yes. If the president was not a businessman, I would be like, okay, he's not a businessman. He's going to be always kind of in the politics, but he's actually a businessman. And in
Mm,
my opinion, he's aware of all the potential impacts, and he's looking at it from a perspective of how can I negotiate better? Because he's a negotiator. He knows how to do deals, and he's actually mentioning the word deals. If you look at his content most of the time, he says deals all the time. Deals, deals,
yeah.
deals, deals. So he's really looking at it from a business perspective. So I don't think he's going to be causing harm to the economy or causing harm to the markets overall because he knows the value of the market. So
Mm,
I think overall it's not something to fear. Probably if you're in the e-commerce space and you're thinking, hey, what should I focus on? I think you should focus on what is the leverage that you have. And in general, it's your business and you have the pricing. So even if, let's say, we go to the worst case scenario, tariffs are causing harm for every business and the prices are surging, this should be something that impact every person. And if you have a higher
mm,
value, then you can actually price higher. And most of the
mm,
time, that's your leverage, your pricing. So you have a tool to offset or kind of fight against any issues in your market. So I think the
yeah.
fear is not necessarily justified, even from a perspective of we're going to have these 200% tariffs. You can still play on the pricing, and that comes back to the value that you position and the branding and how you're pricing and looking at the offer.
Mm. It's very, I mean, it's like it's so similar to like, for example, the actually, I would probably argue that like the Facebook like iOS was a lot worse than this when they
Yes.
changed their iOS tracking and it went from like
Yes.
having people able to opt out of being tracked. I would say that was a lot
That
worse for
was a
like
massive harm. Actually, that was a
like
direct harm that I remember that, but that's 2021. And I remember I was just like, I don't like see all the conversions. And keep in mind, Meta, like Mark, respect, but he started testing things for every person and not telling them. He was pretty much
yes,
testing how to use prediction to get the conversions, and he was really testing things on the back end, and that
yeah,
affected. Like I saw a decreased performance, I saw shakiness in 2021, and I saw a
yeah,
lot of fear as well. So I think, as you mentioned, that probably was really a problem. Like just looking at it from a
mm,
marketing perspective versus this one here. This is like we have still Meta working
God,
actually aged much like that right now. Like Meta is at peak in terms of stability, I would say.
accuracy,
Google,
yeah,
same
so
thing.
true. Mm.
So yeah, I think the fear is probably 2021. That was a big one.
I remember that very specifically coming into we had an office at the time and I remember coming in there and the media buyers that were working for us in the office they were like just going into like a meltdown. They were just like what
Yes.
is this? Where's all my tracking? I can't see anything. This like it was that bad. And I remember like all of the ad accounts that we were running at the time, just like fully like they just went to crap. Performance like cut in half. All of the costs just blew up incredibly, and it was like such a painful period. And I think that was a very interesting time because I specifically remember speaking to people that I was like kind of working with and people in like, other agencies and other like e-commerce firms, other e-commerce businesses. And there was like, oh, I think that this is the end of Facebook. I think that this is the end. Like that whole story as well. It's like, is this going
Meta
to be
is a
the
Meta,
end of
but also
e-commerce?
that's the thing. When I think about it, who's affecting Meta, who's affecting all the platforms. Google
Yeah.
probably they have more backend to kind of convert people and see the data, but it was also affecting every person. So the
Mm,
update with iOS, it was not just Meta. It was pretty much all the apps. And I
mm,
think the fear was very similar to right now, but this time the impact was actually not just tariffs or pricing. It's pretty much stricter. So it's like almost like the US. You can't ship any more product to the US the same way, or the US can't track all the shipping, or there's like a massive logistic issues. And I think it was probably comparable to COVID-19, where the supply chain was kind of paused a little bit initially with China, and then they released
yeah.
things. I think it's similar to that. But this one, massive, problematic because it's like almost like the channel you use and you can't track, and
Yeah.
Meta is doing the changes, and I've seen so much fluctuation. So yeah, it was a messy time. But right
Well,
now,
it
I
would
think
be.
this is
I feel like it would be like would be like if your warehouse just like maybe like one in every two packages just went missing, and you
It's,
and the
it's a
thing is you
trend.
didn't even know who it got to and who it didn't get to, and you were just like, like
Yes,
where
for a
is
media
it?
buyer, that was the best example. Like literally, what's happening? This package should have went to this direction, and somehow like it appeared in China. I'm like, what's happening? It was really, I think, a massive situation. But right now, if I was
Yeah,
to really, let's say you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, hey, what's actually what should I do? What's kind of the situation here, and how should I react? In my opinion, you should focus on your business, look at your leverage, you have your pricing, look at the market overall, and think about it's just an opportunity. There are others sitting out there and thinking, hey, this is a massive opportunity for us. People are thinking about politics, they're kind of getting into fear. I want to position something that's higher ticket or a good value, and I want to launch it, and I know it doesn't really matter, I'm not going to be impacted. So I think there's
yeah,
always that opportunity in any market, and also in every problem, there's an opportunity.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think yeah, this is like another kind of like notch in the belt in terms of like how many times that you'll look back on situations like this and be like, oh yeah, I remember when Trump raised those tariffs, and I remember what happened. Yeah, we're still here, we're still swinging. That was a bit stupid. We overreacted through that situation, and yeah, I mean, like I think one thing maybe to add to it as well is like we in terms of like in the Ecom Capital community, we have a lot of good accountants and financial service providers that actually like give very specific and detailed advice on these things as well. So I think it's good to have that level of like confidence in terms of what you're doing, and not like just blatantly ignore things. Like you want to be able to have the facts and have the direct impact if
The
there
back
are
end.
impacts. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly, exactly.
I think overall, if you're like again, you're unsure, you need information and you need a reliable information. So, for example, in Ecom Capital, we have not only exposure to the market, we also have
Mm,
clients from different locations, and we can see all
mm,
these situations. And our goal is to help clients. So, we are familiar with the US, UK, Australia, Canada,
mm,
regardless of the market. So, I think that's a massive asset for any person thinking, hey, I'm doing ecom. Why are you doing ecom? Because you can sell online, so you don't have a physical
yeah,
shop. So technically, there is a problem in the US. You can sell in Australia. So first, that's the first like kind of like opportunity.
right,
You're not in the US. Second, okay, you're in the US. You can still increase the price. You can also sell in Australia, just to let you know. I've seen many
right.
clients we have. They have a big operation in the US, and they have also in Australia. So you actually have a risk managed overall in the case of,
Mm,
let's say the
mm,
US were to completely close everything they have. You still have Australia, you still have UK, you still have Canada, you still
yeah,
have
yeah,
multiple countries to advertise to. You're doing ecom, there's no limit. And that's why
yeah.
I'm passionate about ecom. And I think ecom is just like, we're not impacted by these things because you can change anytime the location.
Mm,
And I actually I'm seeing more and more a trend toward Australian market and
interesting.
European, because it's a market where right now they're not necessarily imposing challenges for ecom. I've seen a massive
Right.
interest in Australia.
Interesting. Yeah, right. What are some cool things that we might be able to discuss or share or talk about in terms of maybe some things that we're doing in the Ecom Capital community, some things that you're seeing, maybe some clients that you're kind of like working with that might be particularly interesting at the moment. I know last week or the week before we went through that kind of like case study example of Reese and his business. Are there any kind of
Yes.
like other noteworthy things that you think we're working on at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about his case where we scaled, aggressively, I would say, to a certain level. So you went from zero to, think I had a call with him not long ago. He's like making right now like 4K profit a week, which is pretty good in my opinion. This is
Nice.
again coming from no backend in ecom, launch I
Yeah.
think November, or like it's much like very recent, and
Very
being
recent.
able to make 15,000 a month plus in profit, not in sales. That's I think a massive kind of situation here in terms of
Yeah.
returns and life-changing situation. So in terms of things that I've seen, and I'm actually working right now on different situation where it might be surprising actually based on the topic of this call, but I'm actually looking to expand some businesses that are in Australia in Ecom Capital
Right.
to the US. And I've been working on this in terms of we're doing dollar to dollar. So for example, in Australia,
Yeah,
we're
this
selling
is
it for
very
80.
interesting. This is very
Yes.
interesting.
We're,
Yeah,
we're selling it $80 in Australian, so we're selling also $80 in the US. So we have like increased
right.
30% right away margins, like instant. And we're
Mm,
not obviously, having any issues in terms of logistics because we can ship from Australia to the US, which actually we
right.
tested. I have a couple of clients. First, one of them he's selling like a product that's a little bit seasonal, and right now in Australia we're coming into the winter, so I was like, or it's kind of the next season. In the US, it's the opposite. So we're actually thinking, hey, can we run the ads with Australia? Run the ads, sorry, in the US. We did that. We got sales, and the margins are just much higher, and we're selling 30% above. I would say even a little bit more than 30% because we don't have the GST. So it's really a massive situation for us in terms of
Right.
selling from Australia to the US. And I know like, hey, there's politics and things like that. Not necessarily like if we're, still running ads and getting sales and people are actually receiving products. So I'm
Sure, sure,
focusing
sure.
on that.
And interesting. So all you're doing there with some of these brands is um just simply just like advertising into the US and then just shipping
Yes.
direct from
It's just one
from
campaign, the US. That's it. And
right.
and on top of this, we're doing dollar to dollar,
Yep.
like $1, $1. So our margins are just 30% more. So even if we have, let's say, cost of goods going from, let's say Trump would increase 30% and we're normally 10, that's gonna be like, let's say we add in 30%, $3. That's not impactful comparing it to our pricing where we're 100 and we're adding, like I say, $30.
Yeah.
So even
Yeah.
if Trump would to go crazy, it's still making sense for us to run the ads.
Mm,
So really, this is like what's exciting to me right now. I'm doing also this with Bisu, our own Ecom Capital brand, and we're doing this new test where we're actually exploring to expand in the US, UK, Canada. I think massive opportunity right now in ecom. And I know people are,
yeah.
hey, tariffs, and like this is the time we're actually going in the US. And I think that's something to know, just in terms of our direction right now, which is opposite to the news.
Oh, it's completely opposite. It's like Warren Buffett. What does he say? When people are fearful, you should be greedy. When they're greedy, you should be fearful, or something like that.
Yes. Like we're going in the US. Like I'm actually thinking, hey, how can we expand? But I'm seeing this multi like direction in the market where I see businesses in the US interested in Australia, business in Australia interested in the US, and it feels like there's like an interest from both sides. Like right now, expansion is what e-com stores I see kind of they look at. You're running
Mm,
business in the US, you want to have less risk in general. You're running business in Australia, you want to also have that leverage of the
yeah.
US. So
Mm,
diversification, I think, is technically what I see right now as kind of the hot topic and focus for business owners that are actually
right.
working on their business and not looking at the news. They're thinking, hey, can I actually
Mm,
expand to new markets? And I think
right.
that's probably a main priority for any person listening to this.
What do you think in terms of like I guess my perspective on that is also just like attention, right? And you're like, okay, so I'm in Australia and I'm doing 100K a month as an example, and I'm trying to push more volume. Is it more effective potentially just to like really double down in Australia and get to like $500,000 a month, because it's like the attention, the complexity of having like a different, whether it's a different domain or however you're like, driving traffic to a different market entirely. So what's your thoughts on that in terms of the complexity piece?
So in ecom in general, there are some complexities. So you have the domain, which you mentioned, like the domain and also the pricing, which you should
Yeah.
really look at that as well. There's the copy, sometimes the marketing, the way you're saying things, like the
Mm,
creatives, everything is impacted technically. So
yeah.
I would in general look at pushing first the main market. In general, that's my main focus, but it doesn't take away that we need to look at that diversity. So if you're doing 100K a month and you can scale more, by all means, just push your ad spend and scale, but
Right.
there is still an opportunity that you can pursue. So I would look at it from a perspective of if you're pushing the ad spend and you don't see really good ROAS, then maybe adding another market would help you kind of push more. But if you're really profitable and you can scale more, then you can scale more. It's always about
Mm,
right now, what's holding you? Is it like ROAS when you increase your ad spend, you just don't
yeah.
see that same impact? If that's the case, yes, expansion on new market might help you because
Mm,
it's a new market, you're asking less in terms of like where you're running ads versus you already have a good ROAS and they should push it more. That's an easiest like kind of scale.
mm. Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to that in terms of like what's the actual, and I guess like there's that brand that I think I mentioned, and it's a mentor of mine, and they're probably one of the only people that I've experienced that actually have this problem where they've kind of exhausted the TAM. I think I mentioned this to you, right? Where they've kind of they've absorbed all of the actual customers that you can possibly consume in the Australian market. I think they do about $110 million a year, and it's like at that point now we must
Yes.
exploit new
Yes.
markets. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Like you have a good volume and you have so much data, then obviously you should expand. I've seen a lot of businesses would do this just in the early stage, let's say 100K to 100K a month, just because they see a limitation in terms of their CPMs and how they can push more. So they're actually looking at
Mm,
that easier target. Let's say the US, Australia, sorry,
mm,
US, Canada, UK, because they can just get more volume. Let's say 20, 30K from the US is easy, 20,
mm.
30K from Canada, 20, 30K from UK. So you
Right.
add up everything, and that's really big in terms of the business. And I think that's still a valid point. But just if you're profitable, you can scale more, do it. But if you see that you're
Yeah.
kind of getting that ceiling where I'm trying to push, I can't, then maybe adding
Mm,
another market just supply an easier situation.
yeah.
Keep in mind that I don't see it also like I would say a challenging thing to launch in the new market because you can have a new domain that's structured properly, and then you can have the pricing adapted, and that's it. And your
Mm,
creator is a little bit adapted if there's like I would say some copy or something that's more oriented toward, let's say, US or Australia. You
right.
should adapt a little
Right.
bit. But the complexity is not like I would say it's not also like very complicated to do this. It might take like a week or two to launch.
Right, that's what you mean. So you wouldn't even recommend going in and building like a whole new like website or anything like that. You'll run all the traffic to the same
No.
site just on a new domain.
I think with Shopify markets, you have the option to have like
Mm.
Shopify detect the like IP, and
Yes.
you can have multiple domain within the same Shopify store. So
Yeah.
essentially, you can run the ads, and Shopify would detect, and then they're going to be, let's say, oriented to the US version, which would have a
Mm,
different pricing. So you
mm,
can really have everything consolidated into one Shopify store very easily, and that's probably what I will do. So no need for
mm,
complexity.
Yeah, nice. I see what you mean. Yeah, very cool. I think one thing I was having this podcast yesterday with a friend of mine, and he was asking about like how are you able to, or like why and what's the reason behind being able to generate such consistent kind of like results within the company. And I was kind of putting it down to like the level of like specificity that we kind of have when it comes to developing like certain products and having like these products that are really 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 refined for one particular avatar. Like referencing even Reese again from like last week when we were discussing his product and how like granular and specific and direct it is. And it's interesting because I was on a coaching call earlier this week as well, and a lot of the questions that people were having for me were like, okay, so I'm in this process now where I've ordered my product, I know what I'm going to get. What should I do now? You know what I mean? Like, what do I do while I'm waiting? And my kind of position for this is always just like spend time on developing like your customer avatars, the people that
Yes.
you're going to sell to, like the type of messaging that you're going to actually push that into the marketplace, the offers, the type of like problems these people think about before they go to bed at night, like every single possible thing. Because I think one massive blocker that people have when they go to actually like launch their business is they've spent like 6 months, for example, on developing this product and speaking to manufacturers, and they've like got all this like great like product collateral built, and then this amazing thing that they've created, and then it's like, okay, how do I sell it?
Yes, and they're tired.
Oh,
Like, just keep in mind, there's one element. They get to the start line. This is what I mentioned. When you're preparing that first phase, you're not running, like you're not doing anything. You're just
mm,
you're almost like the best example would be like there's a marathon. You're preparing, you're reading the books, but you're not training. When we start running the ads, that's when you start running, and that's when we
yes,
start this journey. So
yeah,
anything before, you didn't do anything. You're just like in the
mm,
theory, you're getting the product. It's like just we don't have any exposure to the market. So how I see it is in this period of 6 months or whatever period that it's taking, you need to keep kind of focusing on what's next and how can I improve my skills to actually go into this phase where I have the best ability to
mm,
running. It's almost like I
mm,
need to train for the marathon, I need to eat properly, I need to sleep, so I need to know everything. But if you just look at the logistics and like the product and just focus on that, then you're technically not training. And you come to the day like, hey, we need to run, and like, hey, how to run? I don't know how to run. Like, I'm not sure. Like, should
mm,
I use like this, like like this road here? Or like, what? I don't know what to do. So my recommendation would be, and this is actually something we have in Ecom Capital. If you think about like the coaching structure, so you have level one where you do market research, and we kind of helping
mm,
people find products, analyze them. So it's really a coaching session around that. And then you have, as you progress, you have this coaching session where we look at the avatar. And it's actually,
yeah,
in every week, we have those sessions where if you attend them every single week in that prep phase, you're going to come to the launch phase where you're pretty much equipped. So you have an
yeah,
understanding on the avatar, you have an understanding on email marketing, you have an understanding on conversion rate optimization. You're coming in like pretty much like an expert in something that others would launch and like, hey, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to look at. And you're coming in, I know exactly what to look at. And I've seen many cases in Ecom Capital where a client would come to you like, hey, I know it right now. Like I'm ready. I can see it. I can see those stages. And in the past, I actually didn't have any idea about them. Like I was just like thinking ecom, we just launched the business and then just going to make money. But right now I see the
Mm,
process. I see I need to run the ad. I need to look at the add to cart. I need to look at the checkout, purchase, analyze my email marketing
mm,
back end. And if I build the system, I can make money. And I'm
yeah.
building my own money making machine. And when you think about
Yeah.
it, if you don't prepare for it, you're not going to build your money making machine. You're just going to be surprised and like all over the place and lost and fear. So for me, that's kind of a no-brainer. You need to really reconsider what you're doing in this period.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like especially with more recently, I feel like the more that I look at and see the results that we're producing in the community, the more it's like it's like better, more frequently, bigger results, like more
Yes.
innovative products, like more amazing founders. Like there's so much amazing things that are being created. It's like this yeah, it's like a little incubator, like this little petri dish that like
Yes.
all these things are growing out of, and you're like,
You're
oh,
looking at them like, wow. Yes.
what is
Yes.
that?
Yes.
You
And
know,
I'm
it's like
excited every time, I had some calls where we see like just we're announcing the ads and we see the sales coming, and I'm like, I'm just excited because I know I've
yeah,
seen many cases where it's scaling, but I'm just excited because we built this. Like I've seen you
right,
work on this when you looked at the ads, when you looked at everything, and I could see the potential millions of
yeah,
dollars that you can generate. It's just an amazing feeling when you look at it. Hey, I actually participated in this creation,
mm,
and you can
mm,
see the business owners. And when I think about this, again, just looking at the past, every scenario that we tackled and this business owner made money in the end. We're creating millionaires in terms of just knowledge and expertise.
yeah.
So it's always
Mm.
exciting when you see that transformation.
Oh, it's exactly that transformation. I think I think the one thing for me that I love about like doing this or being in this particular company, being in this company, I kind of own the company. So
Yes, like, hey, I'm the CEO.
Um, so I think it is exactly that. It's like seeing people when they go from like that real kind of like fixed mindset of like an
Yes,
employee and they're thinking like, very narrow, thinking about like the 9 to 5 and thinking about how they make money. And then they kind of just begin to transform a lot. And then like in like, 6 months, they're starting to think completely differently. They're using like
yes,
marketing language. They're using like
yes.
advertising kind of like,
CPC, AOV,
and
conversion
you're
rate.
like,
We
yes,
know
it's
it.
amazing.
I'm so proud.
Yeah, it's really really cool, and I think that's why the community is like so special that we're kind of like creating here in terms of the founders that come through here, that the kind of like how vibrant and alive and like incredibly enthusiastic the people are in the actual community. I know we've threatened about getting you over here to one of the up and coming events. I think we need to do that.
It's always good to like see people in person. Like my view on this is like again, if you're really thinking about the growth perspective, it's really like for me, it's always like a like the most I would say the thing that would drive me. Like I would wake up so excited when I see that I have to help all these businesses, not just one, all of them, and the impact is just massive. And
Mm,
whenever I hear AOV and the person is optimizing their ads and they're profitable and they're scalable, I'm like, this is why I do this. I do this because
yeah,
I want to see
yeah,
others make money, grow their business, and transform their life. When you see this, you're just excited. For me, there's
yeah.
not the, I would say there's a, like, this, like, it's very hard to find a feeling like the one where you see others
Mm,
actually using your strategies and growing their business. And it's almost like they're trying to do even more than, like, I mentioned this in one of my coaching sessions for the mastermind community, which is a very private session. And I went into a case study, and what I was looking at is this person, I gave them some direction, but in reality, they actually took it always like one step more. So I was always telling them,
right,
hey, this is like, you need to do this. And then tomorrow he's doing more. I'm like, oh, I'm
right,
surprised. And he's taking it to the next level to almost like when I'm looking at it, I'm like, hey, this is my coaching plus you. You're actually adding
right.
in more value. So very excited
Mm.
sometimes like to just see people pushing more and I'm learning. So it's also like a learning, I would say, experience when I see people doing more than what I expected and they're doing more things. And it just, I would say it's a very unique experience.
It is absolutely, and I feel like it's very it's like sometimes you get so humbled because you're like you see people starting out and then they just like pick things up so quickly and you're just like
Yes.
ah
It took me
yes
years. Yes, that's
Yes.
the thing.
It took me years to do this. Thank you for
Yes,
making me feel insignificant.
yes.
This is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm actually, this is the case. Like, it's not something that when I think about it, it's actually like I'm not proud of this, but it took me probably a year to figure out the AOV. Like, what is AOV? Like, I was not even
Yeah.
aware of it. I'm like, I've been in e-com and I've been looking at things like I was not aware of this. And if I see someone just
Mm.
right away within a month, they're talking AOV, conversion rate, CPC, ads, ABO, CBO, I'm like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
this is like these are years that took me to master this, and I think gaining that knowledge and gaining that time, that's what you want to focus on when you're coming into a new space. Like if I was to launch tomorrow a business, let's say in a new industry, the first thing I would do, no brainer, I would go and see who are the people that are doing this activity. How can I learn from them? Because if I learn from
Yeah.
them, I can be much faster, and that's what you want in business.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I reflect back on like some of the first businesses that I started. And I remember like reading like a P&L, and then looking at the brackets on the number at the bottom, and I thought that I had made like 120 grand.
It was negative.
It was a negative. And,
Yes,
and my accountant like sat me down and she was like, Sasha, that means you
it's okay.
lost that. And I was
Yeah,
like, just went red in the face, and I was like, whoa, like, geez,
you
I
thought
need
it
to
was
take a
positive. I,
I need to take a minute. So,
like, hey,
I
I'm
think it's cool.
negative. I thought I was positive.
I think the thing that, about the community that I wanted to share is like the last point here was what do they call that effect? Is it the spotlight? I think it's called like the spotlight effect. There's this particular type of like bias, or there's this experiment that they did, and you may have seen this where they had like researchers, and what they did is they took like um three like paid actors, right? And then they had like one like normal person who was kind of like just a normal member of the public, right? And there were like these four lines drawn on the board, and then one of the lines was like much longer, and then three were the same. And then they had all the paid actors come in there and then point at the one that was like the odd one out. And all the paid actors were paid to point at the same length. And the member of the public, he's standing there and he's looking at this and he's like, are you guys insane? And he's like, he was clearly pointing at the longer line, and they're like looking at him, being like, all three of them, like, wait, what? Are you serious? Like, and they're all kind of looking at him, questioning. And they repeated the kind of like process. They were like, okay, a new piece of paper, let's do the same thing again. Which line is the longest? And they just continued to repeat over and over again. And eventually, what happens is you see this guy, and he's just like a regular citizen, and he eventually, just because of the social pressure, just starts pointing at the line that's like the regular line
Is to follow like, hey,
to
let's
follow.
do it. And
But
that's
the point of that is like is I think about like in this community that we're creating, I feel like we have the same effect that happens, but it's like driving you towards success.
yes.
And it's like people are in here and they're learning things and they're doing things and they're behaving in a way where like maybe their friends and stuff on the outside are looking in and they're going like, oh, really? But like the pull is too strong. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And it's really, really, really starting to like infect people in a great way that actually positively impacts their life and helps them to make more money. So it's really, really, really special. Yeah.
Yes, I think overall, if you think about any opportunity, there's always this fear of, hey, like I'm coming in, I'm not going to make money, or
Mm,
hey, this is a challenging thing because I don't know how to do e-com. If you come in and everyone is talking about the e-com, like the topic is your conversion rate, the topic is your CPC,
yeah.
and you keep coming to these sessions and you get the coaching, you see others. Keep in mind, the coaching is not just me giving you, let's say, direction or yourself or any coach. It's also you have all the sellers, actual
Correct.
sales in the market coming in and sharing with you what they're doing. So you almost have an
Yeah.
exposure to both sides. You can work on your business and get coached, but also you have other businesses coming in and telling you, hey, this is how we do it right now. And I
Mm,
think if you look at this from a perspective of just what you're learning, what you're acquiring as skills in your environment, you're talking about things that are going to grow you, like it's going to grow your business. You're going to make a lot of money from the equity of this business, just selling it in the future. So I think about it from all these perspectives, and it's all about environment. If you're just outside, let's say you're not doing anything, and we have actually one person in Ecom Capital, she joined in and she launched her brand recently. She literally put in a comment in school. She was like, I was going to be watching Netflix, but now I'm running my business. I'm like, hey,
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
strong positioning. So you were
Mm,
probably not even going to do e-com and or even grow something that's big. You're just going to watch Netflix. And she mentioned this in
mm,
school, if I remember well, a comment like this. And in my opinion, that's That's why we do this. That's why there's a community. You need to build that environment, which I think in
Yeah.
school and with our community, you just, you're living and seeing people doing things. And that's what you
Yeah.
should look at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very, very cool. I think this has been interesting and an interesting discussion about a lot of different things in terms of tariffs and Facebook ad account kind of like hacks and
Yes.
tracking and then community and how it feels to kind of like serve great people and deliver epic business results. So always
Yes.
a good quality, well-rounded conversation. I know we've got some great stuff coming up as well, Hammond, in terms of some additional strategic pieces. I know we're going to do another piece on AI, which we'll dive a little bit
Yes.
more deeper into, and then some TikTok shop
Yes.
stuff as well into the future. So a lot of great things coming. Any final points on what you might recommend people at the moment around
So yes. So I think just
tariffs?
to like go over things. So tariffs, you should not worry about that. Just kind of like sum up things here. Tariff, don't worry about it. It's not your problem. It's a problem that's international. It's affecting every person. To focus on your business, focus on the value you're driving. That's the first thing. We heard this in the
Mm,
past. Same thing, same structure. It's just a different story, but it's just the news. So focus on your business, on growth. There's opportunity. We're actually taking businesses from Australia to the US more and more. So I would say you
mm,
should go in that direction rather than fear it. That's the first, I would say, point I would look at. Second,
yeah,
overall, the community, the environment. You're looking at the news, you're kind of looking at other things that others are not necessarily, the sellers are not necessarily
yeah,
exposed to the same thing. Come to the school community, engage with us, learn from us. Look at an environment where the news is e-com. It's just all the sellers selling
yeah.
and kind of you can see that challenge. That's a very important part we talked about. So I think those are the things that I would focus on rather than look at the news and be like, hey, I'm affected and I can't do this. And think about that example of that person from 2020 to today, they still didn't launch their business because of COVID.
Yeah.
So you should not be in that category.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think yeah, times like this where there's like uncertainty and challenge and like fear in the marketplace really like filters out the men from the boys, so to
Yes.
speak. You know what I mean? It finds out who, it's like when the tide's going out, you see who's got no pants or something like
Yes.
that. You know,
Like,
so it's,
yes, absolutely. This is the time to act, in my opinion. It's also a time to build businesses. Like, this is the best time, in my opinion.
yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, amazing. Well, thanks so much, Hammond. I really appreciate
Amazing.
this conversation as always, and look forward to seeing you again next week.
Amazing. So I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to talk about AI. So just keep watching the podcast.
See you then. Bye, everybody.